is that most of us are afraid to enter that kingdom. We're afraid. You know, the children of Israel were in slavery, right? They're at this point that they're in slavery. How good is it being a slave? It's horrible, isn't it? And they were slaves, and all sorts of cool things happened. There was the Passover, and they were released, right? They left that place of slavery, and they became free. Were they in the kingdom? Were they in the promised land? They weren't, were they? And they crossed all this stuff, and we don't know exactly how many days. They had Mount Sinai, they had all these miraculous things happen. They were fed every single day, right, with manna. They had water pouring out of rocks, and they get to this place, and the desert is on their heels, the water is on their toes, and they look across, and there's the promised land. And that land looks awesome. And so they send 12 people into that land as spies. How many of you would love to be a spy? I think that's got to be awesome. Can you imagine? 12 of you and your buddies are crossing over. You know, you go through the thing, you're hiding behind bushes, you're going all over. And what it's recorded in the Bible is that they went on a major trip. If you ever have a chance to look at a Bible with a picture of this trip, they went all over that land. Watching stuff, hiding, looking around. And when they came back, they gave a report. And they were kind of cruel. They had this big, long stick, and on it was huge grapes. Can you imagine how awesome that would have been? You've been in the desert eating manna, and suddenly you see, let me just say the word to you. How many of you like peaches? You know the kind of peach that you have to eat outside because it's just running all over the place? Yeah. So imagine these people that have been in the deserts. They see this fruit that's brought to them on these huge things, and their mouths are watering, and they're saying, "Oh, that looks good. I can't wait. I can't wait to get there." And so their toes are getting closer to the water, right? They're ready to swim across and go grab that fruit and start eating it. And what everyone agrees on out of that whole group of 12 is that that land is flowing with milk and honey. Do you know what that means?
Good stuff.
Margaret Feinberg writes this fantastic book. I forget the exact title of it, but it's just an amazing book. And she broke down that idea to me. The land flowing with milk and honey. For a land to be flowing with milk, that means that birth is happening. Birth is happening. So that means that babies are being born. The moms and dads aren't under stress, and the land is producing offspring. For land to be flowing with honey, that means that the bees are all healthy. That means the bees are getting the nectar. Everything is in balance. So from an ecology standpoint, you know, for us to be like the Green Crusaders or whatever that is, if we're to describe the land flowing with milk and honey, that means everything is completely in balance. The land is awesome. Are we in the land of milk and honey now? No. Everything's out of balance, right? Our hives are collapsing. We're in a world right now in which things aren't out of balance, so we keep trying to get things in balance, but it's just one of those things that we don't have. This land was completely in balance, giving birth and sustaining life, and it was just this perfect ecosystem for those people to thrive. So they all agreed about this, and then 10 of them agreed on something, and 2 agreed on something else. The 10, well actually there's 2 more things that they agreed about. They agreed that the land was filled with giants. The Anak is what they're called. They agreed that that land had huge giants in it. And they agreed that they had fortified cities with thick walls. Everybody agreed with that. Heels on the sand, toes in the water. And at that point, 10 of them said, "We want to go back to being slaves." And they took the people and they said, "We cannot go into that land because there's no ways that we can conquer the giants. There's no way that we can break down those thick walls." And I don't know about you guys, but to me it's discouraging being in this world right now. You look at the things that are happening with our kids. You look at the things that are happening with our families. I don't know about you guys, but maybe you can look at your marriage and realize that there's a thick wall between you and your spouse. That there are some giants of addiction in your life. There are things that are just looming really big. And you're saying, how in the world am I going to go into that promised land? How can I be in God's kingdom? Because there are giants and thick walls and I can't do it. You look at those relationships that have fallen apart, people that you aren't speaking to, situations that are just kind of that echo in your mind of saying, just give up and go back to where it's safe. And so we live fairly basic lives, just hoping our kids will make it out of the home, doing everything in our power to get them there, not realizing that God is saying, I want my power to do it. Those 10 said, I want to go back to slavery, and then there's a speech that's recorded in Numbers chapter 14, verse 7. Numbers 14, verse 7. This is Caleb and Joshua talking. Excuse me, can I start at verse 5? It's not on your screen, but I'll start on verse 5. You'll have to listen to me and then join me on verse 7. It said, Then Moses and Aaron fell down, face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, who were among these, who had explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and He will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of this land, because He will swallow them up. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. I can't do it. We can't do it, but God can. At that moment, people picked up rocks, were ready to stone them, and God showed up in His tabernacle. The judgment was that they had to turn around and wander through the sand for 40 more years until all the men, except for Moses, Joshua, and Caleb, were left. 40 years later, they stood on that exact same spot with the sand on their heels, the water at their toes, and this time they walked into that water. The giants were more prosperous, the walls were thicker, and everything was worse and harder. These people in that land originally feared God, now they mocked God, and these children of Israel walked into the place. They grabbed rocks as a testament to what? God's power and His authority. This kingdom is what they walked into. And what's cool about it is that they walked into this land, and this time they didn't beat against it with their power. They walked around cities, and they blew trumpets, and rocks and walls fell and killed the enemy.